Shelby, it's good to see you finally. Get to
Hey,
finally
it's great to see you guys.
finally put a face to the name. I mean, we've spoken in voice only when we learned your game, but it's finally good to see you. So welcome to Kicking Tables. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm stoked.
Awesome. Well, for those who don't know what Lonely Undead is, why don't you tell our audience what your game is and kind of how it plays out?
Okay. Yeah. Lonely Undead is a zombie themed adventure crawler, um, and something that is kind of particular that I wanted to do with this game for 1 to 4 players. It plays in around an hour to an hour and a half, and can be played with in solo, competitive, and cooperative modes. And like I said, it is a zombie themed game, but something that kind of I really tried to focus on was taking all the things about the zombie genre and about zombie games, and kind of flipping the whole switch on it, in a way, kicking the table on the zombie genre, and trying to do everything different than what's been done before with the zombie games, to try to breathe some new life into the theme and the genre, and try to do something different with it, and show people that there's still some room to wiggle and be creative in some of these areas.
Well, we'll talk about the basics of the game itself. What are players doing on their turns, and what are they trying to achieve?
Yeah, so the players embody the roles of recently infected zombies, and they'll take their turns one after the other and have a number of actions that they can perform. They can perform up to 4 actions, and those actions are a number of different things, such as moving around the board, engaging with the living on the board. Their main objective is to make new friends, and the only way they know how to do that is to bite and infect the living people in the town, to convert them into their new friends. And so they're moving around town. They're trying to bite and infect the locals, gather equipment, and anything they can do to help sort of accomplish their tasks.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. So I want to know, what was the inspiration for you? Like, are you a fan of the zombie genre, the zombie films? What movies and parts of the genre really inspired this game for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of zombie movies, and I did grow up on a couple zombie games. I think there was this game I played on Sega, that Sega Genesis, that was called Zombies Ate My Neighbors,
Yeah.
and I remember playing hours and hours of that game, and I think that sort of like may have been my first exposure to the zombie like genre and theme. Uh, and I guess sort of some of the love kind of grew from there, for sure. These days, I wouldn't put myself sort of in the same category as a lot of like really hardcore zombie fanatics or zombie fans, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a special place in my heart for zombies, for sure.
What was it about the zombie genre that you wanted to turn on its head? What when you approached the game, what did you see about other games that you said I want to do that differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really fought with the genre, the theme a little bit, not the genre, but I fought with the theme quite a bit in some of the early development, because I had some pushback, some like comments and suggestions from people out in the communities, and people who were testing the game, and it kind of like settled in with me that that's sort of some of the reason why I needed to stick with the genre, is because I wanted to do everything differently,
Right.
and so those things that I'm doing differently, obviously, the biggest one is probably the switch, the antagonist protagonist switch.
Yeah.
Instead of being, a human that's gathering weapons and baseball bats and tearing through hordes of zombies and bashing in brains, you're playing the zombie, and you're playing it from the zombie's perspective. You're I'm trying to build a little bit of this sort of sympathetic sort of connection to this character that's confused and lonely and doesn't know what to do, and is trying to find its way in this new existence of being a zombie. So that's probably one of the biggest things that is obviously the most obvious and really stands out, is that you get to play the zombie. So that's the biggest one. Some of the other smaller ones that I definitely focused a lot on, that were easier, I think, for me to do in some areas, because it lines up with my sort of style and design and writing, is that I wanted to not focus on gore and violence and sort of like a lot of sort of in your face, blood and gore and imagery, or in any of the verbiage. I'm more like of a humorous sort of guy when I write, and I like to laugh, and I wanted the game to be lighthearted, and I wanted it to sort of be kind of silly in
Yeah.
some ways instead of super serious and instead of apocalyptic. None of that is really taking place in the game. It's this sort of verge of a new sort of experience, and it's at the beginning of an event instead of the middle of some sort of like zombie crisis.
This is where it all starts. Now, you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier there's actually a solo mode. How
yeah.
does the solo mode work compared to the multiplayer? What is there anything different about the solo mode?
The solo mode doesn't function too drastically different. Kind of interesting with my design process because I kind of set forth these sort of standards and ideas from the beginning that were like rudimentary to a lot of my other decisions. And one of those major decisions, one of those major like sort of pillar stones at the beginning was that I wanted to design with all these modes sort of in place from the beginning instead of added on as something later down the line for people. I wanted to make sure that with people being stoked on cooperative games these days and also into solo games, to see if I could try to mesh them all together in an organized fashion that didn't seem clunky, that was kind of streamlined and kind of could go back and forth between the two rather easily. And so with that, as you guys know, when you play sort of the competitive game, there's always a phase in which the town fights back.
Right.
There's always a phase in which the game's AI sort of comes at you with different sort of random tasks that could affect or make your task harder. And so when you're playing the solo mode, you're doing the same thing that you would be doing in the competitive mode, but it's not necessarily a race to see who can get the most or get the most by a certain point. It's basically to see if you can get so many without the town, removing you, without the town stealing all your limbs or kicking you out of town or you being outrun. So the ante's upped a little bit with the solo mode. You're basically taking on twice as many negative reactions from the town during the town phase. And so it's fighting back even harder. You're taking on everything yourself rather than it being distributed amongst competitors or the whole team.
Okay. So
Okay.
is it really just to challenge yourself to survive? It's a survival mode.
Yes,
Awesome.
basically. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And, I kind of thought about, one thing I didn't want it to be was a beat your own score sort of solo mode. I wanted it to really feel like a genuine experience that was kind of different each time. So,
Awesome.
One of the things that I really liked about the game is the board is double sided, and the other side you have a customizable town, so you can actually put your build the town that you want to, I guess, infect yourself. Tell us
yeah.
a little bit about that and why that decision was made, and I guess it's called the mutated mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I was sort of working on the board, there's a grid system in the board that's kind of paramount to a couple other design aspects. It comes into play when like spawning and sort of locating things based off directions with rules and certain cards. And I built the grid system and started building the town. And it came apparent very quickly that there was an easy ability to sort of like, I got this idea that, it was really simple to take the shapes within the grid system of these structures I was building and pop them out and sort of make them modular and make them polyanomos, make them sort of Tetris-like tiles to represent the locations. And that just got me. As soon as I noticed that, I was like, absolutely, this has got to happen, because I'm a huge fan of modular boards myself. Hand in hand with that decision, wasn't easy either, because I basically, as I was trying to try to design these streamlined things all in one system, it became to the point where it was like very easily there was a base mode and a deluxe mode of the game, which is really common, especially with Kickstarter games, and it's really easy to do for additional content and to offer a deluxe version. But it's something I really didn't want to do from the beginning. I wanted to basically try to include as much as possible for everybody instead of excluding any one audience. And that's not necessarily always the best idea, because you can't really focus necessarily sometimes on narrowing in and narrowing in on a very specific game mode and making it the strongest thing possible. So it was kind of hard to try to create a balance while I was trying to decide whether to do just from the beginning just a blank board and make the polyominoes a part of the game and give like a recommended setup, sort of
Okay.
with the instruction. And I decided that people being able to jump right in and sort of do like a streamlined, quick and easy hop-in game, a faster game with a little bit less involvement or a little bit less like, added layers of depth and strategy. I like the idea of being able to offer both. So that's where the double-sided board kind of came in, and this idea of a more advanced mutated mode that allowed people to build a different town to add to the replayability. And also the mutated mode has, the tiles have locational bonuses on them, like little effects that aren't in the printed side of the game. So that also adds another layer of strategy and depth. So it creates a little bit like heavier game for those that might want to like, kind of dive in there and play with that and create a longer, more sort of layered and more strategy with their gameplay.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. How did the game change and morph throughout its lifestyle? What did the game look like when you first sat down to create it versus what it looks like today? Is it like two completely different games?
Yes. No, I mean, I don't. I mean, yes and no. There was obviously like a lot of evolution of different ideas. There was definitely a lot of like, things that were added and then thrown out, and then things that I thought were great and I tested them and they were complete like dog crud and just didn't work out at all. But I will happily admit, like I like to do. I spend a lot of time just writing, just like writing down ideas, and just spend a lot of time just going through pages and pages. They almost, I mean, they're probably not discernible by most other people, but I can sort of understand what's happening. But I'll fill pages and pages of sort of instructions and writings and ideas,
Right.
and I'll go through and I'll make scribbles and then rewrite, and I'll get to the point where it's like, okay, well now I can start to like, write on pieces of paper and cut them out and spend the next 2 days like, building a paper prototype and seeing how that goes. But I will say that there, I've worked on a couple other designs where I started with it and it was like this idea of like energy sort of moving along a ladder, and then by the end of it, it was like, it's ants carrying rocks. It's evolved quite drastically. And this game really didn't do that. This game really didn't have major like changes. I sort of had like mechanisms that I built up in my head, and this idea for this like hybrid tabletop crawler sort of like light RPG feeling sort of thing. And then I sort of like had inspiration for the theme, and then it really didn't change much after that through the design. I mean, other than like little things and mechanics that just like didn't connect with each other, the theme and a lot of the base for the game has stuck throughout the whole process.
That's awesome. Yeah, because a lot of games, it's nice to hear that basically the game you envisioned at the beginning is kind of what you ended up with. We've spoken to many people where the game they started with has nothing to do with what they ended up with. So that's really cool that it kind of, for the most part, remained the same, which is great. You actually created your vision. Yeah.
So, talk to us a little bit about your Kickstarter campaign. With most Kickstarters, we see stretch goals. Do you have any stretch goals along the way that you might be able to tease for us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of sort of the same sort of what you would like to see, or a lot of the standard things that you do see with Kickstarters. I'm trying to, obviously I want to bump up some of the quality if I can.
Mm-hmm.
There's some a little bit of fun things. You guys may notice when you played the character cards are literally their cards, so they're a little light and flimsy, even though they're larger formatting. I would love to sort of bump those up a little bit in some of their thickness. I would love to obviously like create a little bit higher quality to some of the components. There's a couple other additional things I'd like to try to do. But they might be tried to done on add-ons. I will say the most exciting sort of things that I'm trying to do with my stretch goals is I really want to do more content with the game itself. I love the idea of adding more characters that you can play against. I love the idea of adding more skills and items to the decks. And more than that, I would love to. I designed the game to sort of be expandable on different levels with possible options for scenario play for the
Okay.
co-op mode, or even like a campaign sort of a mode that you could play through in the solo. And those have been in the works, and I would love to try to release those as stretch goals. They're a little bit longer, a little bit further down the line on
Yeah.
the as far as the funding goals for those, because they need a lot of fine tuning and a lot of work. But I'm really excited to try to do more additional content on top of the normal sort of component upgrades for the game.
That's great. Yeah, that's we enjoyed the game, and of course adding more stuff to it and upping the quality would be fantastic. I'd love to see that in the
Yeah.
final release. Now, Shelby, we've got a section where we like to just step away from your game for a second and get to know you as a gamer a little bit more with 8 really fast lightning round questions to get to know your gaming habits. Is that cool?
Absolutely, let's go.
All right, so this is all around your board game and your gaming night preferences. So the first question, dice or cards?
Dice right now.
All right, purchasing games, local game store or online?
Local game store.
Campaign or legacy?
Campaign.
What's the last game you played?
Great Western Trail.
Okay, what's the last game you purchased?
Jedpur, actually.
Okay. Deck builder or deck constructor?
Deck builder.
Worker placement or area control?
Worker placement.
And finally, competitive or cooperative?
Cooperative.
Okay. Awesome. You went through those really fast.
I tried to not think.
Fair enough.
I do
Shelby,
enough thinking.
Shelby, we're excited for your game. Of course, it hits Kickstarter on June 7th, so that's coming up fast. Everybody check it out. There is a link down below in the description. But Shelby, is there anything we haven't talked about? Anything you want to say about your game before we let you go? Anything additional you want everybody to know about?
There isn't a whole lot else I really think I want to say about the game necessarily. I'm stoked to sort of try to bring this idea to fruition. Without a doubt, I've definitely have had a little bit of a sort of an uphill battle with some things, as far as like trying to market it in a way to make it not seem like every other zombie game, and
Right.
that has been a little bit of a struggle. But the main thing that's really helped with that is getting like physically the game in front of people like you guys and other people to check it out, and then everything sort of changes. So I'm stoked to try to give this project a go. It definitely wouldn't be here today if this whole thing, like, it kind of spawned out of the pandemic in a lot of ways. I had been like laid off like early last year, and I had all this downtime and free time and wanted to focus on creative outlets. And long story short, it sort of compounded towards working on this game and dedicating a lot of time and effort to. I'm losing it over here.
That's all right, Shelby. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you about Lonely Undead. Of course, our preview is already up, so everybody go check that out on our channel. And don't forget to check out Lonely Undead on Kickstarter on June 7th. You definitely want to check this out if you're a fan of the zombie genre and want to play something completely different. Shelby, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Sorry about my really cruddy internet and my technical difficulties, but thanks for bearing with me. I had a blast. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome.
All right, everybody, check out Lonely Undead on Kickstarter June 7th. We're on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and the Kickstarter pre-launch. Check out the website. Also, please check out the boys over at OMG Nexus. Thank them so much for having me. Subscribe down below, and I'll see you next time.